what we've been putting together is a program for CFOs, for our CFO, our finance leaders, and the executives in that business unit that typically wind up being part of a first use case in the automation world, but aren't necessarily part of the inception, design, thinking through how to apply RPA in an enterprise. So, my friends at Blue Prism and I decided to put together a program, and we really appreciate your input as you've been so pivotal in creating the success of the automation program at Darden. So thanks so much. So having said all of that, I think the most important thing to do is introduce you to our CFO community. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background, and we'll start there. How's that?
Okay, well, you know, CFOs are my favorite people, it's a privilege to talk to them. I actually report into the finance organization. I've been with Darden Restaurants my whole career. I have 47 years with them, and we started as a small company, and I don't know if everyone will know, I hope everyone knows Darden Restaurants has 8 really terrific restaurant brands. And we've been a shared service operation for over 30 years. So we get a lot of efficiency out of being shared service. My background is finance. I'm an accountant. I'm a CPA. I started in business when we didn't have computers. I know it's probably hard for you guys to tell that I might be slightly older than you are, Paula. But
not much.
One of the things that I've noticed over time is the way that we've automated things has significantly changed over time, and not so much for the better. Initially, when we automated things in business, you kind of got what you wanted. You sat with the programmer and you told them what you wanted, and you got it. And then it evolved into packages. When the packages came out, then then we automated through packages, and you kind of got what the package provided, and you never knew what you were going to get till it was implemented. And with RPA, is kind of going back to old school stuff where you actually sit down with somebody and you tell them what you want, and and that's what you get. So for me, I was about ready to retire. Had actually, I don't know, 2 months or so to go in my career when my boss asked me if I, kind of like, what are you doing for the next couple months? And I'm like, not much. We have this pilot. We want to do some robotic process automation. Wondered if you would, head that up. And I'm like, what do I know about robots? I know nothing about robots. And so we ended up doing a proof of concept with RPA with Blue Prism software, and I loved it. I mean, it's just it's what I love doing is digging into manual processes, finding out what people are doing, and making it easier, taking away the stuff that they don't think about, the stuff they don't like to do, the stuff that bores them. And so that's really how I got into RPA. And
so let me stop you there for 1 second. 1 second, Bill.
Yeah.
So you touched on several things that are really, really exciting and I think fascinating for the CFO community. So first of all, you're a like-minded CPA, right? I think you have another credential that you failed to mention too, right?
Yeah, I'm a CMA. I don't think people know what that is, but certified management accountant, and have an MBA. And I've worked with systems and accounting, finance, real estate, long time.
So, and my purpose in saying that is because you're acutely niche for the RPA COE to be able to understand those processes. So, and that brings me to something else that I think made you the best candidate, despite the fact that you were, on the brink of retirement. Discovering RPA, I think, was natural. So I don't know if I shared this with you, but my background is actually in process improvement. So one of the things in understanding the linear nature of a process helps you understand where it is that you can automate it end to end. And now we all know that, with the advent of technology the way it is, it's no longer just about RPA, right? There's several other tools that have to kind of come into play. And one of the people that we spoke to, talked about Blue Prism Cloud, and Blue Prism Cloud was one of the solutions that sort of integrated some of these adjacent technologies. So I think it's absolutely fascinating that you were installing some of the first servers, the first ERPs at Darden, and then it pivoted to something that was naturally easy for you to segue. Now, taking away your accounting ability, tell me a little bit about why. Okay, so pretending that you're not an accountant necessarily, why
That's
is
going to be hard.
It's going to be hard, but I think this is really important to denote, because despite the fact that you have the savvy in finance, 85% of organizations that start their automation journey typically pick the AP, accounts payable department, because there's several processes that can be done there. So you just had an added advantage, naturally understanding that process. So what I'd love to hear from you, and I think will help our CFO friends, help us understand what it took for you to get the alignment. And yes, I know that you report to him, but what were the measurements? What was the ROA? What was your pitch internally to say this is exactly where we should start when we're assessing what we're going to automate first? Can you help me understand a little bit about how you got this business unit to adopt RPA as an idea from the very beginning? I know it's been a while, but at the beginning, because I think that beginning is going to be really important to this audience.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'll ever drop the accounting mindset, but what drove us to start is we had just acquired another concept called Cheddar's Scratch Kitchen, and our CFO, it was like a 20% increase in our business, and he wanted to not add any people, and you know how that goes over, and so we saw this software at a conference, and it was just like, well, if we can't add people, can we get some licenses to offload some of this work there? And so that was really the problem that we were trying to solve when we got into RPA. And we started off with, and I'd recommend that people start off with small, kind of easy things to do to build up some success. You said accounts payable. We started off with 6 projects. We actually dropped 2 of the 6 because they were going to take too long, and the first one we dropped was accounts payable. but we ended up doing some other accounting stuff. And the way that we sell it is it was successful. A lot of companies talk about doing proof of concepts, and we did a proof of concept. And I would say that's to a finance guy, to these finance guys, I'd say don't do any proof of concepts. It works. If you're going to start, build something that you're going to put in production. Don't just do a test, because so I say you have to have faith. It's easy to pick with this automation stuff. We had our executive sponsor was our CFO, as you mentioned, and so he was instrumental in funding the thing. And so you got to have faith and leadership, and then you got to pick the right people. You got to invest in the people. We talk about technology, but it's really people that make all this happen. And then you got to pick good partners. Like when we started, we just hooked up with this company called Wonderbots. I don't even know how we found them. We've worked with them over the last 3 years, and with Blue Prism software, and it's worked out really well. So we started small. We picked some things that we knew were digital. We knew they were mundane kind of processes that would work, and then we successfully implemented them, and then that's how we started off.
Fantastic. And you mentioned a couple of things there that are important to note too. So first of all, Darden's in the 20% that doesn't start with the AP. It sounds like I learned that today. But you scrapped that one. But I think that's a really important thing to note too. often, again, from your experience, you can relate to this. Transformation projects of any digital kind, right? Especially when you're approaching, it sounds like you had a very specific event, an acquisition that you wanted to have a specific, event, and you had to cater to a specific answer, right? Within an allotted time, and then not hire any additional headcount. That came and went, and you're still automating more processes. So what that tells me is that, independent of RPA solving an initial challenge in an organization, perhaps, really what it's allowed you to do is kind of open your minds, and the sky's the limit on all the possibilities. So what I'll do now, what I'd like to pivot to now, and I'll come back to that point, but what I'd like to ask you about is once you started getting that stakeholder alignment, and of course you're in a unique position to have the CFO, as your right hand man on this, on the buy-in for this. What other business units or what other places did you guys start investigating as potential places to automate? And how did you rally the troops around getting stakeholders that were outside of the finance function to buy into what you guys were doing at Darden?
Well, it starts with your leader, okay? So, you got to have somebody at the senior level that will help. It's not a bottom-up process. You have to have the workers that get the work done, that build a business case that you can sell. But it really has to have it has to go into the senior meetings where, hey, we just automated this and saved X amount of dollars or whatever. That got us into. At Darden, we have, by functional area, they have quarterly meetings. And once we had some automations in production, we developed a story. Here's the RPA story. At Darden, we like to use this thing called SPAR stories, which is you describe the situation and you talk about the problem, what action we took, and what was the result. And I'll credit Justin Sikora for teaching me the SPAR thing, but we went into these meetings with hundreds of people in IT, with HR, with legal, supply chain, and we had good stories on what we did. And not everybody got on board. We actually developed a penetration roadmap that I monitored, where we would track by department whether they were aware, and once they were aware, were they studying it? Once they were studying it, were they helping us develop some things? And finally, were they in production with us? And so right now we have, I don't know, of our 10 major functional areas, we have something going on. We have automations in production for all those areas, because everybody wants to save money, and RPA is just automation is just cheaper than doing things with people, digital type work, and then let the people work on solving problems, creating opportunities. Figuring out new marketing tactics and all that.
So it sounds like your driver's completely shifted, and you're even going to the front of the house and kind of customer-centric automations now. So yeah, that's really 25%
of our automations actually impact our restaurant brands, the marketing or operations, and those are the ones we really love to work on. Those are the ones that, if it touches the guest, touches our guest, a process done with an automation gets done accurately and fast, doesn't back up. A lot of these processes, when they're manual, and you run into, business kind of has ups and downs, and when you run into a peak time, reaction to your customer slows down when it's a manual process, and when it's automated, you just run the bots all night long. They don't care how long they work every day.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So one of the other things that that comes up a lot too is people ask, okay, so you have these robots in production. There's a lot of misconceptions, right? And again, remembering, I know that you're so far into your automation journey, you can probably hardly remember picking a platform. But one of the things that a lot of people run into is what about the change management component, right? So when you mentioned the people, and I know that that's a very important part to you, and it always was for me too in my career. Really thinking about how people are going to respond to something is very important when you approach a transformation. And again, remember our CFO audience, they have change fatigue from transformation after transformation for the past 10 years, right? And if they're not digitally transforming, they're changing their operating model, they're considering a shared service center, perhaps an outsourcing model, is going to be added to the mix. Oh, but there might be an acquisition coming up next year. So the finance department is in a constant ebb and flow about these transformations. So some of these concepts, it almost feels like too much work to even learn about a new technology or to learn about something that could really, be nimble and help. And oh yeah, I'm so sure that's going to be a reconciliation tool that's going to solve for all the ages, right? I mean, they have been sold technology to apply to business functions for decades. And so what I'd like to focus on too is with RPA, one of the things I always try to evangelize is that it's a very nimble and simple technology, and it's code light. I used to always call it code light. You don't have to be a hardcore coder, to really get your feet wet and starting. So I think from your perspective, it'd be nice for you to share a little bit about the debunking of RPA as this complex, overhaul of a transformation, and talk about how it was very nimble and some of the experience that you had that shocked you about how simple it was to get in and up and running in production.
Okay, well, it's I've been in these transformational things. I mean, it's you don't know what you're even going to get in the end. You definitely don't get what you wanted, and it's usually some package thing that it's allegedly going to do everything that you need, but until you've bought it and you're leasing it or whatever, and you're actually in the testing of it, do you really find out what it's going to do and what it doesn't do. But even with RPA, I mean, change management is massive with anything that you do with people. And I mean, the keys, I think, to success is to listen to people and really understand what it is they do and what it is that how you can help them. I mean, with RPA isn't really like I mean, we just installed a new P2P system, okay?
Good example.
Okay.
Great example.
I won't name the consulting firm that came in and did it, but I mean, it took years to do. It doesn't do, it's a great system, no hacks on Coupa, but it doesn't do everything that you thought the way that you thought it was going to do. Well, the people I call the people I work with at Darden my clients. The clients, they come to us to help them do the stuff that Coupa was supposed to do that it is not doing, or any package. It's not just that, because it's a lot more nimble. You can just custom program what you need, and the projects in my mind they're smaller with what we're doing. We don't have we have a massive IT department, a great IT department. They focus on big things, okay? Where we fit in our company is the things that people can just never get done with IT. It's just not big enough of a project or whatever. And so they love us because we can come in, they can talk to us 1 week, we can within a few months, we can do what it is that they want done, and they get it the way they want it, So but you have to, you can't just go in and change everything without really dealing with the change management part of it, like you said. But it's a lot different. It's a lot easier. The change management with RPA, if you do it right, people love it. Are you kidding me? This is the thing I don't like to do in my job every day. And then suddenly they get to work and what they need to work on is done. They're not sitting there running reports, moving data from one system to another system so they can see, what are the things I really need to work on. They just come in and see the things that they can do that add value to to their function.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think, one of the things too that we're constantly seeing is that, in the finance department, I don't know if you're experiencing this at Darden, but it's really hard to retain and attract talent in finance. And so to your point, when you're the graduates of 2020, right? When they're coming out and off to a budding career, at some organization and as a clerk for the first time, they're going to be far more apt to sit down at a table where they push a button, or where they know that an automation was, a digital worker was taking care of what they needed to prepare for the day, and get to their analysis as opposed to doing the mundane work. So I think that enabling CFOs to understand the power of employing digital workers into their business units is really going to help with talent retention. Do you have any thoughts on that, or talent acquisition retention?
In finance, particularly, you get all these accountants or analysts or whatever, and if depending on how your systems work, they spend 68-70% of their time putting together stuff for management to look at. Well, if you have a good RPA system, you can take the time that they're spending getting information from this system and information from that system, and maybe moving it into a third system and then doing whatever with it. And what you really want those guys doing, and gals, is looking at the data and seeing what the pattern is, where are the problems, and not just spending all their time putting this information together and then handing it off to management for management to then to look at. It allows you to kind of move down the action steps within finance, and less time just moving numbers around.
And a far more purposeful life at work, right? And really using what humans were, intended to do, which is use our brains instead of doing, the mundane work. So, I agree completely. One of the things that you had mentioned too that I thought was so fascinating about, how you guys started this was, the scaling part of it, right? So we've identified there's been a couple of transitions in Darden, which has pivoted your call to action as an RPA, COE, a center of excellence. So first there was an acquisition, then it sounds like continuous improvement, then it sounded like taking off some of the burden from the IT department. And so these continuous iterations of finding places where you can be of value to your organization is exactly what I'm trying to evangelize to my CFO friends, because they, after all, are the ones that have the numbers. So you're in a very unique position to have the CFO stakeholder. I'll reiterate that over and over again. You mentioned having fun, and I think that's really important too, especially nowadays, finding that employee work morale, there were studies earlier this year in the future of work about how, the onset of the millennial in the workplace and all of these different, trends that are kind of converging. And I think we're in kind of a peak of it right now. But one of the things that I think you mentioned that is important to note is that RPA is fun. It can be, having a digital worker be able to aggregate the data required before I write a blog, for example, or do one of the pieces that gives me joy in my job, instead of just writing purchase orders or writing scope of works. I can sit down and I know that everybody that I need to contact can be aggregated because I have a digital worker that has aggregated that information to get me ready for success. And so part of this evangelizing exercise that we're doing, the fun in RPA, I think, is important to denote. And you guys did something really fun with Wonderbots, and unfortunately, it was right before I joined. But you guys had a build a bot day, and I heard about this, and I was like, wow, this is innovative, so fun, and what a really great way for the partner, for the platform provider, and the client to collaborate on the best way to move forward. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, because I just found that to be the most creative and exciting way to kind of rally the troops from the rest of the business units and say, have you thought about automating this? So please share with us some of the ways that you guys are getting creative about finding new places to automate.
Yeah, it was massive. It was fun. It was a full day. We, we worked with our communications department to build posters and send out communications. Our executive team got these flyers at one of their outings, and our CFO built it up. And the whole event was come down and spend 15 minutes. That's what we were asking for each person. We had 4 different stations set up. They'd go into a station for about 3 or 4 minutes where we said, this is what RPA is. Next station was, here's how Darden has used it. Next station was, here's what the kind of work it does. And then the 4th station was, they, bear with me, they had to fill out a piece of paper, don't tell anybody, where we were trying to collect ideas. The whole purpose was to build awareness of what it was, of what RPA does, how we've used it. I mentioned that we went into department meetings to try to evangelize it over the years. But this one we made fun because just by going through this event, they got a chance to win some gift cards. And then the best ideas that we collected, we got ideas from people. We got over 200 ideas on things that people said, I'd love it if you would take this work away. And we had over 200 ideas. The best 3 ideas got some digital prizes, iPods, some kind of Amazon, whatever. I don't even know what it is. I don't have one in my house. One of those things that you talk to, it talks back to you. But it just sparked the whole thing. I mean, we have probably 2 or 3 years worth of a backlog right now of ideas. We ended up with the equivalent of we measure our value in how many hours a week we save the company. And I know you might ask about that. I know you like to tell the finance guys about the ROI and all that, but we just got massive ideas that we otherwise wouldn't have got. And we had food from our concepts. It was just a fun day. It was just a fun day. And Wonderbots and Blue Prism helped put it on with us. They sent some people out to man our stations. It gave us a chance to engage one-on-one with 1,000 people. So it was really cool.
No, that's awesome. And unfortunately, right now we're in a virtual world, so we can't do those live. But we've actually been talking about doing those ideation sessions virtually because of the success that you guys had. 3 years worth of backlog is a big deal. One of the things that we had talked about with a previous panelist was how often people fail to miss the mark, and miss out the fact that year 2 and year 3 actually tend to be harder. And typically it's because of a lack of a backlog or a lack of understanding what kind of processes should be considered or not, and then not getting that stakeholder alignment. So you guys have just checked every single box on best practices. Sounds like you had a good partner advising you along the way.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but yeah, actually it was Steve Whitelaw from Blue Prism is the one who gave us the idea, and then we worked with Steve Lavelle from Wonderbots to create the idea. Originally, it was thought to be an event that would interest people to be developers. Okay, we have enough. It's not hard to get developers. Okay, what it's hard to do I thought, was we were at a point where the obvious things to automate, we had automated. And we just knew there was another hundreds of them. But, you have to, giving food away, giving stuff away is kind of a good way to get people engaged in it. And it was just a massive success. We just have got to work on all those. Yeah.
Well, and so that brings me to, and God, thank you so much for your time. It really has been so valuable. And we'll close out with the value conversation. So, as you mentioned, yes, it's very important to understand the payback period. We talked last week about how ROI is an antiquated term and almost non-applicable when it comes to RPA and for various reasons. But what I wanted to tie in is the importance of your backlog. There's an exercise of sequencing that takes place to understand what automations you should begin with, because perhaps the payback value will enable you to fund your subsequent automations. So there's a very important piece to sequencing, and often with clients we've seen that having a robust backlog really gives them a broader option, right? Like a greater pool to decide to pick and choose what automations to start with. So that always comes back to, however, the way that they measure value. So if it's a payback return period, this morning I actually spoke to a person that had an acquisition. They have $63 million worth of synergies to realize in 2020 via automation. It's a very specific number to reverse engineer from. So multiple companies find various ways to ascertain value, and you guys have a very unique way to do it, and it's weekly. So could you share with us kind of how you thought that through and how that's been kind of the driver to keep you guys honest about your automation program staying in check?
Yeah, well, most of our automations save time, save somebody time. Some of them add value by other measures, speed, more accuracy. That we have an automation that helps us with our capacity management in the restaurants with reservations that adds sales dollars. So there's different ways to manage, but most of them save time. And the easiest way to measure time is with hours. So what we do when we sit down with a client and discuss an idea is we ask from the get-go, what's the savings going to be? Because we don't really work on things that are, don't have any value. It's nice to work on something that will save somebody an hour a year or something like that. But I mean, we don't have time to do that. So we just came up with, somewhere in my life, way before you were born, probably, I learned that this is an accounting thing, a beanie thing. So bear with me, that you shouldn't spend more time measuring things than the value you get out of the measurement. So we could have made this very complicated to measure the value of RPA. But what we decided on is we would measure how many hours a week does this automation save. So if it saves 4 hours a month, that's 1 hour a week. If it saves 100 hours a month, then it's 25. Or if it saves 10 hours a week, that's 10. We just came down to one measurement. How many hours does this automation save per week? Because then we can just have a report of all. We have 60 automations in production. You can just line them up and see one way to measure all the things, all the different. We also have a 5-year plan that I update once a year for our steering committee. It has, has ROI, internal rate of return, net present value, all the kind of traditional ways that you look at investments. But I like the hours back to business is what we call it, and we call it the HBB, weekly HBB. And what we like to do when we're working on a project, we look at how many hours it's going to take to develop the project, how many hours is it going to save per week, and if a good project will pay back sometime in the next quarter. So if we can get the hours saved to be to be about 1/4 of the hours that's going to take, then it's a good automation. For example, if it takes 80 hours to do it, and you can save 20 hours a week, I mean, we're just falling all over ourselves to go get that one done. So we primarily use hours back to business weekly. And
That's
right now, so our fiscal year ends next week, and our goal was to get to 900 hours. And so I think we're going to end up at like 924 hours a week. So you can, kind of convert that into a number of people. We've had the programs slightly less than 3 years. Most of the time it was just 3 of us, 2 developers and myself. And then the last year we had 2 other developers go. So we have massive payback period, internal rate of return, net present value. It's just it's payoff. If I can mention one other thing though.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
This virus thing. Okay, so in a week we had to close, all of our restaurants and lay furlough over 100,000 people. Our business completely changed, and you would not believe, there was just a lot of opportunity that came up that just had to be done right away that we did with RPA. So whenever, we were able, unemployment, for instance, the number of unemployment claims was unbelievable, and HR, they needed to process those claims. We had different terms with our vendors on invoices that we had negotiated. We had thousands of invoices we had to change pay dates on. So there's about 6 automations that we did within a month that couldn't have been done any other way, that the RPA team was able to step up and really help with the business. And then conversely, within a week, everything's opening back up. And so there's this massive change in our business that RPA has really helped with some automations that fill in some gaps that otherwise would have required a lot of people to be working really crazy hours.
And you're in such a great position to have been able to already have the capabilities in-house to say, there's a new way to do this. There's an alternative way to do this, and you guys stepped up. So what a great heroic COVID story too. That's fantastic. And and so I've gotten so much out of this, and we could chat on forever. But with that, I am going to thank you for your time, and then ask if there was anything else you think. If you had to give one nugget to a CFO on how to get started in RPA, if they haven't already, what would that be?
Just do it.
Yeah. All right. Simple.
That's what I would say. Just do it. Go small. Go small. Remember, it's about people. It's not about technology. Hook up with somebody that like Wonderbots. Hook up with a good provider like Blue Prism, and I don't think you'll regret it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. It's just fun to be able to take work away, get work done faster, more accurate, without massive transformations to deal with.